My name is Catherine Whitmore. I'm 73 years old, and for the past 6 months, I've been living as a ghost in my own home. Not literally, of course, but close enough. My stepchildren Marcus and Diane thought I was dying. They thought I was too weak, too confused, too medicated to notice what they were doing. They were wrong. I noticed everything, and I recorded it all. It started the day my husband, Richard, died. We'd been married for 28 years. He was 76, a retired investment banker with a mind sharper than most men half his age. Richard had 2 children from his first marriage, Marcus, 48, and Diane, 45. They tolerated me when Richard was alive, barely. At family dinners, they'd smile with tight lips, call me Catherine with a coldness that made my name sound like an insult, and leave as soon as dessert was over. Richard knew. He'd squeeze my hand under the table and whisper later, "They'll come around, Kathy. Give them time." But time ran out. Richard had a stroke on a Tuesday morning while reading the newspaper in his favorite leather chair. One moment he was circling an article about the stock market. The next he was gone. The doctor said it was quick, painless. I held his hand anyway, even though he couldn't feel it anymore. I held it for an hour before I called anyone. When I finally did call, Marcus arrived first. He walked into the study, saw his father's body, and his first words weren't about grief. They were about logistics. "We need to call the lawyer," he said, pulling out his phone. "Dad's estate needs to be settled quickly. There are properties, investments, the lake house." Diane arrived 30 minutes later, her designer sunglasses still on even though it was raining outside. She hugged me briefly, a perfunctory gesture that smelled of expensive perfume and insincerity. "Oh, Catherine," she said in a voice that dripped with false sympathy. "This must be so hard for you. Don't worry, Marcus and I will handle everything. You just rest." Rest. That word would become their favorite weapon. Over the next few weeks, as we planned Richard's funeral and dealt with the paperwork of death, Marcus and Diane kept telling me to rest. "You look tired, Catherine. Why don't you lie down? You seem confused, Catherine. Maybe you should take your medication. Let us handle this, Catherine. You're not well." The truth was I was fine. Grief-stricken, yes. Exhausted from crying, yes. But my mind was clear. Crystal clear. Clear enough to notice that Marcus had asked the lawyer for copies of Richard's will before we'd even buried him. Clear enough to see Diane measuring the living room windows for new curtains while I was still picking out Richard's casket. Clear enough to understand that they were waiting for me to die. The realization came slowly, like a sunrise you don't notice until the room is fully bright. It started with small things. Diane insisting I take my blood pressure medication, even though I'd already taken it. Marcus bringing me dinner from a restaurant, always heavily salted, always rich, always exactly the kind of food my doctor had told me to avoid. "You need to keep your strength up," he'd say, watching me eat with an intensity that made my stomach turn. Then there were the conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. "I have mild hearing loss," or at least that's what they thought. Richard had bought me hearing aids years ago, and I wore them dutifully. But what Marcus and Diane didn't know was that I often turned them off during family gatherings. The silence was more peaceful than their barely concealed hostility. After Richard died, I kept that habit, and that's when I started hearing the truth. It was a Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks after the funeral. I was in my bedroom, supposedly napping, my hearing aids turned off as usual. But I wasn't sleeping. I was watching the dust motes drift through the afternoon sunlight, thinking about Richard, about our life together, about how strange it felt to be alone in a house that had always been filled with his presence. That's when I heard their voices, muffled but clear enough, coming from the study below my bedroom. The old house had heating vents that connected the rooms, a quirk of Victorian architecture that Richard had always found charming. I'd found it annoying when we first moved in, able to hear every conversation from every room. Now I was grateful for it. I got up slowly, quietly, and positioned myself near the vent in the floor. Their voices floated up like smoke. "The lawyer said the will reading is scheduled for next month," Marcus said. "A month? Why so long?" Diane's voice was sharp with impatience. "Standard procedure. But I already got a copy of the will from Dad's safe. I know what it says." There was a pause. I could imagine them leaning forward, co-conspirators in their father's study. "And," Diane prompted, "it's better than we thought. The estate is worth about $12 million. The house, the lake property, the investment portfolio, everything. I heard Diane gasp. 12 million. Richard had never told me the exact figure, just that we were comfortable, that I'd be taken care of. What about Catherine? Diane asked, and I held my breath. She gets a monthly allowance. 50,000 a year. Enough to live on, but the bulk of the estate is split between us. Dad set it up that way to protect his legacy, to make sure the family money stayed in the family. Family money. I'd been married to Richard for 28 years, had taken care of him through 2 heart surgeries, had given up my own career as a librarian to travel with him, to entertain his clients, to be his partner. And I was worth 50,000 a year. That's smart, Diane said. But what if she lives another 20 years? That's $1 million just sitting there. She won't live another 20 years, Marcus replied, and his voice had a coldness that made my blood freeze. Look at her. She's already deteriorating. The grief, the stress, her blood pressure issues. I give her a year, maybe 2. Then everything is ours. A year is a long time, Diane said. We could speed things up. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything illegal, Marcus. Don't be ridiculous. I'm just saying that if Catherine's health were to decline more rapidly, if she were to become unable to care for herself, we could have her declared incompetent. Then we'd control the estate as her guardians. And if she dies, then we inherit immediately. Dad's will is very clear. If Catherine dies, the full estate goes to us. No waiting, no allowances. They talked for another 20 minutes, discussing which properties to sell first, how to reinvest the money, what to do with Richard's art collection. They talked about me like I was already dead, like I was an inconvenient obstacle between them and their inheritance. When they finally left, I lay on my bed and stared at the ceiling. I didn't cry. I was beyond tears. Instead, a cold clarity settled over me like frost on a window. They wanted me dead. They were planning to either wait for me to die naturally or help me along by encouraging health crises. And they thought I was too stupid, too grief-stricken, too old to notice. That night, I went down to Richard's study. I sat in his leather chair, the one where he'd died, and I thought about what to do. I could confront them, but what good would that do? They'd deny everything, call me paranoid, use it as evidence that I was mentally declining. I could cut them off, refuse their help, but they'd find that suspicious too. Or I could do something Richard would have appreciated. I could be smart. I could plan. I could play the game better than they ever could. The next morning, I called my doctor and scheduled a full physical. Dr. Morrison had been my physician for 15 years, and she knew me well. "Catherine," she said warmly when I arrived. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I replied. "But I want to make sure I'm taking care of myself." Richard would want that. She ran every test imaginable. Blood work, EKG, cognitive function tests, everything. A week later, she called me with the results. "Catherine, I have to say you're in remarkable health for 73. Your blood pressure is well controlled with medication, your cholesterol is perfect, and your cognitive scores are actually better than average for your age group. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." I thanked her and asked for copies of all the test results, which she provided without question. I filed them away carefully. Then I called an old friend, Patricia, whom I'd known since college. Patricia had become a private investigator after retiring from the police force, specializing in elder abuse cases. "Kathy," she said when she heard my voice. "I was so sorry to hear about Richard." "Thank you, Patricia. I need your help with something, and I need it to be completely confidential." I told her everything. The conversations I'd overheard, Marcus and Diane's behavior, my suspicions. Patricia listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "This is more common than you'd think," she finally said. "Adult children waiting for elderly parents to die so they can inherit. Sometimes they even help things along. You're right to be concerned. Can you help me? I can do better than that. I can help you protect yourself and gather evidence if you need it." Over the next few weeks, Patricia taught me how to use a small recording device disguised as a pen. I carried it everywhere, clicking it on whenever Marcus or Diane visited. She also installed hidden cameras in the common areas of the house, tiny things no bigger than a button, positioned where they'd never be noticed. "The goal," Patricia explained, "is to document everything. If they're trying to harm you or manipulate you, we need proof." The proof came faster than I expected. 2 days after the cameras were installed, Diane came over with lunch. "I made your favorite," she said, setting down a container of chicken soup. "Homemade, lots of salt for flavor. You need to keep your strength up." I thanked her and ate a small bowl while she watched. The soup was indeed very salty, far too salty for someone with blood pressure issues. After she left, I poured the rest down the sink and checked the recording. Diane had brought the soup, watched me eat it, and then, when I excused myself to use the bathroom, she'd gone to my medication cabinet. The camera caught her clearly, reading the labels on my prescription bottles, checking dosages. She even opened my blood pressure medication and looked inside. "Perfect," I heard her murmur to herself. "She's taking it regularly." "Good." A week later, Marcus came by with a bottle of wine. "I know you and Dad used to enjoy a glass with dinner," he said. "I thought you might like this. It's a nice Cabernet, very smooth." "That's thoughtful, Marcus, but you know I'm not supposed to drink with my medication." "Oh, one glass won't hurt," he insisted. "Dad would want you to enjoy life, not just exist. Come on, have a glass with me. We'll toast to his memory." He poured 2 glasses before I could protest. I took a small sip, just enough to satisfy him, and watched as he drank deeply from his own glass. We sat in silence for a few minutes, and then Marcus said, "Catherine, I've been thinking. This house is too big for you. All these stairs, all these rooms. What if you fell? What if something happened and no one was here to help?" "I'm managing fine," I said carefully. "But are you? Really? Because Diane and I have been talking, and we think it might be time to consider assisted living. Somewhere with staff, with medical care on site, somewhere safe. You want to put me in a home. Not a home. A community. A nice place where you'd have friends, activities, care. We could sell this house, use the money to pay for it. It would be better for everyone. Better for everyone. Meaning better for them. Easier access to the estate if I was tucked away somewhere they could control." "I'll think about it," I said, knowing I'd never agree. After he left, I watched the recording. As soon as I'd left the room to get cheese and crackers, Marcus had refilled my wine glass to the brim, trying to get me drunk, trying to make me more vulnerable to his suggestions. The recordings piled up. Diane suggesting I stop taking my cholesterol medication because it was probably unnecessary. Marcus bringing rich, fatty foods despite knowing about my dietary restrictions. Both of them constantly pushing me to sign papers, to make decisions, to agree to changes I didn't understand. And then came the conversation that changed everything. It was late at night, almost midnight. I was in bed, but I wasn't sleeping. I rarely slept well anymore. That's when I heard them downstairs. They must have thought I was asleep, must have used Marcus's key to let themselves in. Their voices floated up through the heating vent, and I turned on the recording device on my nightstand. "We can't wait any longer," Diane was saying. "It's been almost 4 months. She's not getting sicker, she's getting stronger. I saw her gardening yesterday." "Gardening? She's not dying fast enough. What do you want me to do?" Marcus sounded frustrated. "I've been trying to encourage lifestyle choices that would accelerate things, but she's not cooperating. Maybe we need to be more direct." "Diane, we can't. I'm not talking about anything obvious. But there are ways. Medication mix-ups happen all the time. Falls happen. Old people die, Marcus. It's natural." There was a long silence. Then Marcus said quietly, "Let me think about it." They left 20 minutes later, and I lay in the dark, my heart pounding. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were planning it. The next morning, I called Patricia. "I need to accelerate the plan," I told her. "How fast can we move?" "What happened?" I played her the recording from the night before. When it ended, Patricia swore softly. "That's conspiracy to commit murder, Kathy. Or at least elder abuse. We have enough to go to the police." "No," I said firmly. "Not yet. I want to do this differently." "How?" "I want to change my will. I want to make sure that if something happens to me, they get nothing. And then I want to let them think they've won." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "You want to fake your death?" "No. I want them to think I'm dying. I want them to show their true colors in front of witnesses. And then I want to come back from the dead." A slow smile spread across Patricia's face. Richard would have loved this plan. Over the next 2 weeks, we set everything in motion. I met with Richard's lawyer, Gordon Ashford, a man who'd known Richard for 40 years. I told him everything, showed him the recordings, and asked for his help. Gordon was appalled. Catherine, I had no idea. Richard trusted them. He thought they'd take care of you. Richard saw what he wanted to see. I see what's really there. I changed my will. Everything I would have inherited from Richard, I directed to charity. The house would go to a foundation that provided housing for elderly women. The investment portfolio would fund scholarships for library science students, a nod to my old career. The lake house would become a retreat for cancer patients. Marcus and Diane would get nothing. Are you sure? Gordon asked as I signed the papers. I'm sure. They wanted me dead for money. Now there's no money to be had. Then came the performance. I started acting weaker, more confused. I'd forget conversations I'd just had with them. I'd stumble on the stairs. I'd leave the stove on. I'd take medication at the wrong times. Every action was calculated to make them think I was deteriorating rapidly. Marcus and Diane responded exactly as I'd predicted. They became more attentive, more concerned, more helpful. They came over daily, brought meals, organized my medications, scheduled doctor's appointments. To anyone watching, they looked like devoted stepchildren caring for their elderly stepmother. But Patricia's cameras caught the truth. They caught Diane switching my blood pressure pills with placebos. They caught Marcus researching natural causes of death in elderly women. They caught both of them discussing how to make my eventual death look accidental. We're almost there, Patricia told me. One more week, and we'll have everything we need. That final week was the hardest. I had to pretend to be even weaker, even more confused. I started using a walker I didn't need. I wore the same clothes multiple days in a row. I stopped wearing makeup. I became the dying old woman they expected me to be. And then Gordon called to say it was time. The will reading was scheduled for a Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock at his office downtown. Gordon sent formal notices to Marcus and Diane, informing them of the reading and requesting their presence. He also sent a notice to me for appearances. The plan is set, he told me over the phone. Are you ready? I'm ready. That Friday morning, I woke up early. I showered, did my hair and makeup carefully, and dressed in my best navy suit, the one Richard had always said made me look like a queen. I put on the pearl necklace he'd given me for our 25th anniversary. I looked in the mirror and saw not a dying old woman, but Catherine Whitmore, 73 years old and very much alive. Patricia picked me up at noon. You look beautiful, she said. Like someone who just came back from the dead. That's the idea. We drove to Gordon's office building, a sleek high-rise in the financial district. But instead of going inside, we went to the parking garage and waited in Patricia's car. At exactly 1:45, Marcus and Diane arrived separately. Marcus in his black Mercedes, Diane in her white BMW. They walked into the building together, and I watched them through the tinted windows of Patricia's car. They looked excited, eager, ready to finally claim what they thought was theirs. We waited 15 minutes. Gordon had instructed them to arrive early, to sit in the conference room, to make themselves comfortable. At exactly 2 o'clock, Patricia and I took the elevator to the 14th floor. The law offices of Ashford and Associates were elegant, all dark wood and leather furniture. The receptionist, who'd been briefed on the plan, smiled at me warmly. Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Ashford is expecting you. Conference room B. We walked down the hall, and I could hear voices through the conference room door. Marcus and Diane, talking in low, excited tones. Patricia opened the door and I walked in. The silence was instant and absolute. Marcus and Diane were seated at the long conference table, Gordon at the head. They'd been laughing about something, their faces flushed with anticipation. Now they stared at me as if I were indeed a ghost. Catherine, Diane's voice was barely a whisper. You're supposed to be dead? I finished calmly, taking a seat at the table. Sorry to disappoint you. Marcus stood up abruptly. What is this? Gordon, what's going on? Gordon adjusted his glasses and opened a folder in front of him. This is the reading of Richard Whitmore's will as scheduled. Please sit down, Marcus. But Catherine is very much alive and well, as you can see. Now sit. Marcus sat, but his face had gone red. Diane looked between me and Gordon, her mind visibly working, trying to understand what was happening. I don't understand, she said finally. You've been so sick. We've been taking care of you. You were dying. Was I? I asked pleasantly. Or did I just let you think I was dying? It's amazing what you can learn about people when they think you're not paying attention. I nodded to Patricia, who stepped forward and placed a laptop on the table. She opened it and pressed play. The screen filled with video footage, a compilation of everything we'd recorded over the past 3 months. Diane switching my medication. Marcus bringing dangerous food. Their late-night conversation about accelerating my death. All of it, time-stamped and documented. The color drained from Diane's face. Marcus started to stand again, but Patricia put a hand on his shoulder. "Sit down, Marcus. We're not done yet." This is illegal," Marcus sputtered. "Recording people without their knowledge is perfectly legal in this state when there's suspicion of elder abuse," Patricia said calmly. "I'm a licensed private investigator, and this is all admissible evidence." Gordon cleared his throat. "Now, as for Richard's will. Catherine is correct that Richard left his estate primarily to her, with provisions that upon her death, the bulk would go to his children. However, Catherine has exercised her right to create her own will, determining the distribution of the assets she inherited." He slid 2 copies of my will across the table, one to Marcus and one to Diane. "As you'll see, Catherine has chosen to leave her entire estate to various charitable organizations. You are not mentioned." Diane grabbed the will and read it frantically, her hands shaking. No, this can't be legal. Dad wanted us to have this. He built this wealth for his family. He built it with me," I said quietly. "For 28 years, I was his partner, and he trusted that I would make wise decisions about how to use what he left me. This is my decision. You can't do this." Marcus shouted. "We're his children. We have rights. You have the right to exactly what your father left you directly, which was nothing. Everything was left to Catherine, with the understanding that she would care for you in her own will. She has chosen not to do so. That is her legal right." Gordon closed the folder and looked at them both with something like pity. "I'd also like to inform you that copies of these recordings have been forwarded to the district attorney's office. You'll likely be hearing from them regarding potential charges of conspiracy to commit elder abuse, possibly attempted murder." Diane started crying, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and frustration. "We took care of you," she hissed at me. "We came every day. We brought you food. We tried to help you. You tried to kill me," I corrected gently. "There's a difference." Marcus was shaking his head over and over, like he couldn't process what was happening. "This is insane. You're insane. We'll fight this. We'll contest the will. You'll do nothing," Gordon interrupted. "Because if you try to contest this will, we'll release these recordings publicly. Every news station, every newspaper, every social media platform. Everyone will know that you tried to murder your stepmother for inheritance money. Is that really the legacy you want?" The fight went out of Marcus all at once. He slumped in his chair, suddenly looking much older than his 48 years. Diane was still crying, but quietly now, the tears of someone who knows they've lost. "I think we're done here," Gordon said, standing up. "Marcus, Diane, you're free to leave. Catherine, if you'd stay for a moment, we have some paperwork to finalize." They left without looking at me, without saying another word. I watched them walk out of the conference room, 2 people who'd spent months planning my death, now walking away with nothing. When they were gone, I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. "Are you all right?" Patricia asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted. "I feel like I should be more upset. They tried to kill me. They're Richard's children. But mostly I just feel relieved." "That's normal," Gordon said. "You've been living with this stress for months. It's over now. You're safe. What happens next?" "With the DA?" Patricia answered. "They'll investigate. They might press charges, they might not. Elder abuse cases are notoriously hard to prosecute. But at minimum, there will be restraining orders. They won't be allowed near you again." "Good," I said firmly. "Because I never want to see them again." We finished the paperwork, and Patricia drove me home. The house looked different, somehow brighter, even though it was the same gray Victorian it had always been. "Thank you," I told Patricia as we stood in the driveway. "For everything. You saved yourself, Kathy. I just gave you the tools." That night, I sat in Richard's study in his leather chair. I poured myself a glass of the good scotch he'd kept for special occasions and raised it to his portrait on the wall. "I think you would have approved," I told him. "I hope you would have, anyway." In the end, I kept the house. The charities could wait until I was actually gone to receive their inheritance. I had friends over for dinner, real friends who loved me for who I was, not what I could give them. I planted a garden that spring, roses like the ones Richard used to buy me. And I lived. Not just existed, not just survived, but truly lived. Marcus and Diane were charged with conspiracy to commit elder abuse and fraud. Marcus took a plea deal, Diane fought the charges and lost. Neither of them served significant jail time, but their reputations were destroyed. No one in their social circle would speak to them once the recordings became public record during the trial. I heard through Gordon that Marcus moved to Seattle, trying to start over. Diane lives in a small apartment across town, working in retail, all her designer clothes and expensive tastes gone. Sometimes I wonder if they think about what they lost. Not the money, though I'm sure they think about that constantly. But the relationship they could have had with me, if they'd just been patient, if they'd just been kind. Richard left them more than money. He left them a stepmother who would have cared for them, supported them, loved them if they'd let her. Instead, they chose greed. And greed, as Richard used to say, is the most expensive vice of all. My name is Catherine Whitmore. I'm 73 years old. And I'm not dead yet. Not even close. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.